So what would be a really simple and direct way of almost eliminating the vast majority of stress, tension, and anxiety in a way that was nearly sure to succeed because it was based on actual physiological principles and psychological principles of how our brain works and how our brain perceives and filters through reality. Might sound like a tall order or a lofty thing or something that's quite impossible or otherworldly, but the fact of the matter is it's actually quite basic and simple and something that anyone can do. And really all it comes down to is looking at our inputs. Because in the same way that we are what we eat, we are what comes into our brain, we are what we perceive. And if we put garbage in, we're going to get garbage out. Put stress and tension in, we're going to get stress and tension out. Now, that's where most conversations sort of begin and end, because this leaves it in this sort of vague kind of new agey, like law of attraction, spirituality sort of thing, which is fine, but it doesn't really do the whole thing justice. So really what we can do going further is understanding that if we're consuming just massive amounts of negative media, whether that's news, whether that's music, whether that is music or TV and movies, conversations, if all these things are inherently negative, which they usually are, then of course, what are we going to get out? Probably just more of that negativity. If we're watching stress and tension and anxiety all the time and up and down and all this roller coaster sort of thing, what is that going to do to us? Well, by default, by logic, by principle, that's what we're going to get out. Thus, we're going to feel like, oh, I'm so tense, oh, I'm so anxious, oh, I'm so stressed. Well, why? I don't know. Something must be wrong with me. And then it really opens that whole door of things. Or we're so used to being programmed with this sorts of things that when we have events in our life, we respond out of those things. And we're sort of just programmed and stuck in this little loop and this basically self-defeating cycle. Now, really, if we want to eliminate stress, tension, and anxiety and all this crap, we just turn all of that stuff off. We just eliminate those things and or replace them with more positive, more uplifting, more sort of nourishing or more balancing inputs. Or we just eliminate them altogether and just be quiet and sit with ourselves and pay attention, or just be and be present and see what's actually going on in the world around us, rather than always having to stare at a device or stare at this device or stare at that device 24/7. Now, this seems really simple, obvious, basic, silly, but it is actually quite powerful because of what it's actually based on. And this thing wasn't really problematic, in the past as much because we didn't have such massive amount of media. We didn't have the ease of accessibility, meaning anywhere, anytime, you can pretty much open your phone, turn on the TV, or get some sort of media in your face and pumping you up full of the conversation. Now, what this was all really based on is a couple of different things. First is obviously garbage in, garbage out. Second is that looking at how our brain actually works and how our brain actually filters things. So the second thing we can understand is these things called mirror neurons. And what these things do is allow us to see something and then feel that inside of our body as if it were happening to us, positive or negative. Meaning, it was actually discovered because these researchers were studying how a monkey's brain was responding to eating food. And when this monkey would eat a banana, a certain part of its brain would go off. And then one day the researcher walked in the room and ate the banana, and the monkey was watching the professor or the researcher or whatever eat the banana, and that same part of his brain went off, even though he wasn't eating it. And then that really opened the research for this whole idea of mirror neurons, which has had a lot more research done and found out that humans have the same thing. And then if we hook ourselves up and measure ourselves, we can watch events happen and our body will register chemical responses, stress responses, all these different things as if it were happening to us, even though it isn't. Going further, I'm sure you've had a dream, a bad dream, a nightmare where you're getting chased or something bad is happening and you wake up in a cold sweat, you wake up and your heart's pounding, but in reality, nothing actually physically happened in your body. It was all created in your mind. So we can ask ourselves, well, if we have these mirror neurons, we have this capability in our brain, what are the effects of watching negative, bad news all the time? What are the effects of watching garbage TV and movies and horror films and slasher films and all of these weird, stressful things, and music that's really not based on much other than just gross entertainment or gross sort of exaggerated noise? And really, we can ask ourselves all these questions, see, well, what's really going on here and what am I really taking in? And start to get present to the actual dynamic of that relationship and the dynamic of that moment. So we have these first two things, and thirdly, we can understand that really we have this part of our brain called the amygdala. And this controls a lot of how we filter reality, and it's really all about our survival. So of course, this is part of the reason why bad news sells and why bad news perpetuates and is just so pervasive all throughout the news media, is because people are just running unconsciously with this thing happening, not realizing what they're doing, and they're just driving stress and tension and anxiety deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper in to their system, and just responding from there, and just creates this really downward spiral of negativity and just not really feeling that great. So one thing I would recommend after we've all arrived at this and understood this and basically wrapping up this conversation is definitely check out the link below this video. It's a talk on abundance, and it's sort of a reframe on a lot of ways that we see the world and a lot of the major problems that we think that we have as humans. Now, to illustrate that, we can understand a couple different examples. So back in the day, aluminum used to be more expensive than gold. It used to be the most expensive, rarest thing on the planet. Even though aluminum makes up, I think, like 6, 7, 8% of the actual mass of the planet. But what happened is it's bound up with a bunch of other things, so there's really no way to sort of separate it and get to the aluminum. But then a new technology came along, a new process came along, which made getting that aluminum out of the other things that it was tied up with super quick, simple, easy, and cheap, which immediately the price of that aluminum, boom, tanked out, and it was no longer a special, rare, exotic thing. It was something that today people just wrap food with it, wad it up, throw it away, don't even worry about it, don't even think twice. So in that example, we can understand that maybe it's not always about resources. Maybe it's more so about technology and our adaptive strategies to utilize that technology. So just a simple little reframe, and a simple story to illustrate some principles, and highly recommend that you check out the link below the video to the other video, the other talk on abundance, because it's really good and a really great antidote to a lot of the BS propaganda and fear-mongering that we're inundated in with this media reality culture that we have right now. So hopefully this video has been helpful. Hopefully it's been entertaining. I'm sweating because it's like 100 degrees and incredibly humid, so hopefully all this sweat isn't showing up on video. But anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.